It's Psychology Radio. I'm Tabula Rasa. I'm going to be taking you through this hour. We are talking about Chapter 13, or Social Psychology. We just want to get an A on the test. We're looking at the vocabulary and the topics that we discussed. The first one was the study of the causes and consequences of sociality. Well, social behavior is how people interact with each other. Social behavior is how people interact with each other. Social influence is how people change each other. Social influence, change each other. And social cognition is how people think about people. Think about that. Cognitive, cognition, how people think about each other. Let's go through those. The social behavior is cooperation, or behavior by two or more individuals that leads to a mutual benefit. Being part of a group or a collection of people with something in common can have some consequences, like a common knowledge effect where group discussions focus on information known by all group members. That's common knowledge effect. Group polarization, which is a tendency for groups to make decisions that are more extreme than any member would have made alone. And groupthink. Groupthink is a tendency for groups to reach a consensus in order to facilitate interpersonal harmony. Think about the jury, right? Somebody on the jury doesn't really want to convict somebody, but everybody else wants to go home, and so they just go along just to keep the harmony. That's groupthink. De-individuation is an emergent in a group which causes people less concerned with their personal values. So people might do things that they wouldn't normally do because they're in a group. A diffusion of responsibility is a tendency for individuals to feel diminished responsibility for their actions when they are surrounded by others who are acting the same way, like social loafing, or a tendency for people to expend less effort when a group than when alone. So somebody sees somebody fall over, and because there are 10 people watching this person fall over, nobody actually goes and helps the person get back up again. That's diffusion of responsibility. Bystander intervention is the act of helping strangers in an emergency situation. People are less likely to help a person in distress when there are many other bystanders present because they assume someone else will intervene. Okay, that's bystander intervention. Diffusion of responsibility is kind of the same thing, but I guess this one has its own vocabulary. So you're going to have to look that one up on your own if you're not sure what it is. Altruism is a behavior that benefits another without benefiting oneself. So it's of somebody that's completely giving something to somebody else without having or wanting or getting anything back in return. That's being altruistic, or altruism. Reciprocal altruism is behavior that benefits another with the expectation that those benefited will return in the future. Reciprocal altruism is not altruistic behavior because they want that money back or they want something for that money. That's not considered just altruism. Reciprocal, that's different. The social influence, this is the next section, the social influence. It's the ability to control another's behavior. We're influencing how somebody does something. The basic motivations make us susceptible to social influence. Hedonic motive, which is where people are motivated to experience pleasure and avoid pain. The approval motive, which is where people are motivated to be accepted and to avoid being rejected. And the accuracy motive, which is where people are motivated to believe what is right and avoid believing what is wrong. So the basic motivations for social influence are hedonic motive, which is they just want to have pleasure and not pain. Approval motive, which is where they want to avoid being rejected and they want to be accepted. And the accuracy motive, which is where they just want to do what is right. The hedonic motive goes into a little bit more detail. It says social influence creates situationalism in which others can achieve more pleasure by doing what we want them to do than something else. The approval motive says the norms are customary standards for behavior that are widely shared by members of a culture. The norms of reciprocity, the unwritten rule that people should benefit those who have benefited them. Normative influence, another person's behavior provides information about what is appropriate. And door-in-the-face technique, which is the influence strategy that involves getting someone to deny an initial request. Conformity is the tendency to do what others do simply because others are doing it. Obedience is the tendency to do what powerful people tell us to do. How can obedience lead us astray? Well, if you're really interested and have Netflix, you can go watch The Experimenter, which covers this chapter. The Stanley Milgram study, which is the electronic shock therapy. where he tells people that he's shocking somebody, but he's really not. And just to see how they handle that, it's really quite interesting. But give it a whirl, give it a look. The accuracy motive. That's where attitudes, enduring positive or negative evaluation of an object or an event, that's an attitude, a belief, enduring piece of knowledge about an object or an event, and informational influence. Another person's behavior provides info about what is true. Persuasion, that is where a person's attitudes or beliefs are influenced by communication from another person. Systematic persuasion would be attitudes or beliefs that are changed by appeals to reason, and a heuristic persuasion is attitudes or beliefs that are changed by appeals to habit or emotion. Consistency is the foot in the door technique, making a small request and then following it up with a larger request. Can I come in for just a second to use your phone? Great, thank you. Can I use your bathroom? Great, thank you. Can I stay over for the night? See how they did that? Foot in the door technique. Cognitive dissonance is an unpleasant state that arises when a person realizes inconsistencies in actions, attitudes, or beliefs. The next section is social cognition. That's the process by which people come to understand others. Social cognition. That attribution is inferences about the causes of people's behavior. A situational attribution is a person's behavior caused by some temporary aspect of the situation, and a dispositional attribution is a person's behavior caused by a relatively enduring tendency to think, feel, or act in a particular way. That's dispositional attribution. Covariation model says consider the consistency, consensuality, and the distinctiveness of the action to determine if we should make a situational or dispositional attribution. There's a correspondence bias, which is a tendency to make situational attributions for our own behavior while making dispositional attributions for the identical behavior of others. It's okay if I do it, but if you do it, it's not a good idea. That's the end of the chapter. I hope you get an A on the test and you have a good time. Thank you. Bye-bye.